Add excitement to your holidays with Ohio Lottery Holiday Scratch-Offs, including $1 holiday cash and $5 holiday lucky times 10, or Holiday Bonus Millions with a 200 times multiplier and a $2 million top prize. Plus, enjoy second chance drawings where you can win 10 times, 100 times, or 1,000 times the price of your ticket. Scratch-offs make the perfect gift, and best of all, there's no wrapping required. Lottery players are subject to Ohio laws and commission regulations. Play responsibly.
Welcome to Mind Love, episode 210. Today's episode is all about taking your time back.
What if balance is something you could create in your life, where you feel a sense of balance, even in an out-of-balance world, where you can be a balanced person and still be busy, where balance looks more like confidence, being proud of how you spend your time, actually enjoying your life. I think that's what we're actually after when we say we want balance. And it turns out the path to that is not productivity. It's not waking up earlier, staying up later, having a better time management app, pouring more coffee, working smarter and harder, and being more efficient. That's not the path to what we're really after.
Turn up your frequency with Mind Love. Bite-sized brain hacks for seekers, dreamers, and doers. It's time to give your mind a little love with your host, Melissa Monti.
Hello, love. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit that cute little button. Subscribing, sharing, and 5-star reviews are really a great way to give back if you find this show helpful. They help the show climb the charts, which helps me get even more amazing guests for you. Today, I am stoked to read a review from Sita Lila. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. She says, "What a wonderful podcast sharing different ways of seeing the world, including tools and processes to change just about anything. Thank you, Melissa, for your loving wisdom." Well, thank you so much for taking the time to leave this review. I am so grateful. And now let's get into the show. Today is the final episode of Mind Love's Parent Month, but I will say this episode is totally relevant even if you're single without kids. Let's be real, how many of us have actually mastered our time? I have my moments, and I'm always learning new things that help, but I go in waves of productivity. I'll time block my tasks, plan my day the night before, delete all my distracting apps, make Mail and Safari inaccessible on my phone, basically be like a powerhouse for a month, and then I'll need to post something on Facebook, so I'll re-download it or share something to my Insta story. And before you know it, I'm like, where did my time go? And then I repeat the cycle. And that's without a kid. My new mom life is a whole different adventure. The first few months of motherhood, I was like, this is gonna be impossible. There's just no way I can do anything else at all. I'm just destined for this right now, sitting in my nursing chair, playing with my weird sideburn wisps, compliments of postpartum hair loss. And this is it for me. And then I started to get the hang of actually working while nursing or while he was napping on me, and I could see this light at the end of the tunnel. But then he'd reach a new phase, and naps were no longer on me, and he didn't want to be set down, or he's pulling things off shelves, and I'd come up with a whole new system, only to have to start over a month later when he unlocks even more skills. It's pretty exhausting. And also rewarding, and suddenly everything in the world is just full of cuteness, so I am not complaining, and I've got goals. I have a purpose to pursue in addition to motherhood, and I don't believe that I'm meant to give that up. So even if I am recreating a new schedule every few months, that in itself is part of my purpose. It's not just the result that's the purpose, but even the effort that goes into making my life as meaningful as possible. And for me, that means creating a legacy that I'm proud of. That right there is the first step, the commitment to finding the time. If you go through life and you're like, ugh, but I just can't find the time, rather than, I will find a way to do this, then guess what? Your reality will be exactly what you believe it to be. You will not be able to find the time. If someone came to you and said, your family's life depends on this, you would find a way. I know maybe that's kind of a grim example, but sometimes it's those extreme examples that finally get people to admit, yes, there is a way, I'm just not willing to find it. It may not be easy and it may shake up your status quo, but it's not impossible. The problem is, it's also difficult to move beyond what we're used to or what we're comfortable with, even if the status quo isn't actually comfortable. When I finally started to work toward a more purposeful life, my whole outlook on life changed. My outlook on myself changed. Suddenly, the contrast to where I was so stark that I couldn't believe I sat in the mud for so long. We humans can get used to almost anything. When we get used to our own complacency or even suffering, it becomes hard to imagine that life could be any different. I mentioned earlier that I go in waves with productivity. Well, I personally go in waves with pretty much everything in my life. It's how I've always been. So even now, I go through waves of losing that spark in life. But now, I leave breadcrumbs from my higher self as reminders. It's not always this way, Melissa. There are ways to get out of it. Here's a couple I'm going to sprinkle down to you. Yes, life feels overwhelming right now, but this challenge was meant for you. And you can do anything you put your mind to. You are meant to do great things, whatever feels great to you. I've been using those affirmations a lot lately. I've basically taken the last year to just be with my pregnancy and my baby. And of course, make sure the podcast is still going strong. But I've also taken a hiatus from creating courses and coaching. Well, now I can feel myself entering a new phase of creation. I've actually been working on something super exciting for a while, so stay tuned for that, but I'm not ready to release it yet. Which means, though, that I also need to make sure I find time to bring my ideas into form. So how do we find time when we're also juggling the hardest job in the world, that is parenting? Well, that's what we're talking about today. Our guest is Christy Wright. She is a #1 national best-selling author, personal development expert, and host of The Christy Wright Show. She's been featured on The Today Show, Fox News, and in Entrepreneur and Women's Day magazines. Since 2009, she's served at Ramsey Solutions, where she teaches on personal development, business, and faith. So 3 key things we will learn are how to differentiate between urgent and important, how our labels and limitations affect our time, and an intuitive process for deciding what really matters and making the time to do it. But before we get into all that, I want to invite you to wake up to the morning mind love. Every weekday morning, you get some inspiration to set a positive tone for the day. I like to think of it like a little love letter from the cosmos. Plus, when you sign up, you get 2 free gifts, a 30-minute binaural meditation and 30 days of journaling prompts to help you grow. And it's all completely free. So join over 9,000 people and go to mindlove.com to sign up. And now let's welcome Christy Wright to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited about this.
So I am excited about this interview because I am a new mom. I have a baby that's almost 9 months old. And
congratulations.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, the greatest joy of my whole life, but also time and being an entrepreneur and even having time to just like clean my house or brush my hair. The other day,
or sleep, any of it.
Oh my gosh. I got out of the shower the other day and realized I had somehow let my hair completely dry without ever brushing it, which is crazy because my hair goes like down to my butt. So what inspired you to write a book about taking back your time?
Let's be honest. I wrote the book I needed. I am a mom of 3 young kids. And I think that one of the things that fascinated me about this topic of balance and time management is that I have been a business coach for over a decade. And the #1 question that I have been asked in the last 10 to 12 years is not a business question. It's this question. How do you balance it all? How do you balance everything? How do you have time for all the things going on in your life? And so it clearly showed me as a content creator, as a leader, a business coach, it showed me that this is a major pain point for people. So naturally, as a problem solver, I'm very entrepreneurial. I want to solve problems for people. That piqued my interest even before I had kids of my own. So I've been writing on this topic and researching this topic for years. And then when I started a family of my own with my husband, and we went from 1 baby to 2 babies under 2, and then we added a 3rd baby, and life only got busier and crazier, and managing my time only got harder. And so it led me down this path to really dig into this topic. And for me, and this is one of the things I love about the tagline of my new book, the guilt-free guide to life balance, for me, the issue I really want to help people with is not time. It's the guilt that we associate with our time. Because I think everybody feels this, but parents especially feel this on a different level. And that is just that we always feel like we're doing the wrong thing. No matter what we're doing, we feel like we're doing the wrong thing. We feel like we never have enough time for all the things that we want to do. We're not sure what balance is. We're just sure we don't have it. And so we live our whole lives feeling like we're failing, and we're not. And so I set out to redefine this word balance, which is what I do in my book. I redefine it. And then I wanted to shine light into a space that is often kind of dark and weighed down by guilt, and just bring some hope there. So that was really the heart behind it. It was something I'm living out, but it's also something I've heard from people for a really long time.
Yeah, it's interesting to me because I am so grateful that we found an amazing woman that can come help a couple days a week. It's usually just 1 to 3 days a week for a few hours. And even with the help, I feel like I do not have nearly the amount of time I need to just keep my house in order, make food. We live in a small mountain town, so we don't have the luxury of Uber Eats anymore. There's so much. And so no matter what thing I choose to do, there's a part of my mind that often feels like, well, maybe I should be doing that thing over there, or maybe I need to devote more time to this, or I should give my husband the freedom to go do something fun because he hasn't. While in my mind, I'm thinking, wait, whenever I get free time, it's just to work. I don't have any free time to do any of the fun stuff. And so you're so right about that guilt. Where does it come from, do you think?
Well, I think it's a combination of factors, but I'll tell you the number one source for me was that I realized early on into having my first son, Carter, and I guess he was about 4 months old when I really kind of learned this for the first time. And that is that I realized most of my guilt came from one consistent place. I was always focused on where I was not. So when I was at work, I was thinking about my son. Is he okay? Did I forget his snack? Does he need me? Am I a bad mom? And then when I would go home and be with my family, I was thinking about work. Oh, I forgot that email. I forgot to fill out, that deadline and, complete that chapter or make that phone call. I was always thinking about work. So when I was at home, I was thinking about work. When I was at work, I was thinking about my kids. Let's go ahead and acknowledge that if you live your entire life this way, always focused on where you are not, then of course you feel guilty because you're always focused on where you're not. And what's interesting is we do this with our to-do list as well, Melissa. So you might put 50 things on your to-do list. I like to exaggerate, but really for a lot of people, they've got crazy to-do lists.
Yeah.
And let's say you get 47 of those things done. You're not proud of yourself for the 47. You beat yourself up for the 3 that you didn't get to. And so we live our whole lives focusing on where we are not and what we are not doing. And so we are weighed down by guilt, and it spins up this narrative that we're failing. And so what I want to do, and I do this through my book, but I do this through my podcast, my teach, anytime I have an opportunity to talk about the subject, what I want to do is I not only want to redefine life balance. And the way I define it in my book is life balance is not doing everything for an equal amount of time. It's about doing the right things at the right time. And when you do the right things at the right time, you will feel that sense of balance that you've been looking for. But here's what's key. It's not just about identifying what's right, and it's not even just about doing what's right. That's a huge part of it, but it's not all of it. Once you do it, you have to recognize that that was right. Because if not, then you spend your whole life doing things and always feeling guilty for what you didn't do. And so I want to redirect people's focus to what is in front of you, what is right, what did you decide is a priority, and be proud of that. Give yourself to be proud of that. So let's say, for example, in your world, Melissa, let's just say, on a Saturday, you're like, my number one goal is just to have time with my baby. I've been working all week. I want time with my baby. I'm not going to worry about the house. I'm not going to worry about my work. I'm not going to even worry about alone time with my spouse. I'm just going to spend time with my baby because I haven't gotten to do that this week. Well, then at the end of Saturday, if you spend all of Saturday playing with your baby, you go, great job. That was a great day. I did the right things at the right time. I did what was right for me. I'm not going to look at this mess on the floor and tell myself I'm failing. I'm not going to worry about work and tell myself I'm failing. I'm not going to feel like a bad wife. I'm going to go, look, I did what I decided was right. So it's a very simple practice that I am trying to help people with asking the question, what's right now? When you ask yourself what's right now, whether that's today, what's right now this week, what's right now this season, where you identify what's right for you, and then you spend time on it, what's so beautiful is you give yourself this gift of being proud of those things, being present for those things, making progress in those areas. But here's what's really powerful. You shake the guilt for all the things that are not right now. So for me, this last fall, I launched a book that was number one, A1 priority. I decided in advance that it was. Outside of that, I was spending time with my family. And outside of that, I'm in seminary taking classes. Keeping a clean house, working out, seeing my friends are things that I like to do in other seasons, but they're not right now. So when I walk through the living room and I step over toys, I don't beat myself up. I say, girl, that's not right now. You're reading 300 pages a week on Revelation. You're doing great, okay? So we're going to redirect our focus to what is right now and be present for those things and proud of those things. And I think we'll find when we get in the habit of doing that, we can really shake the guilt that keeps creeping up.
Before we go deep today, I want to give you a little gift, and I want to give it to you every single day. It's called the Morning Mind Love. I know how life can be. You're all fired up after an inspiring episode, and then a new day or a new challenge comes at you, and it's just hard to keep up that energy. Well, the Morning Mind Love is kind of like an oracle from your higher self to help you start each day with a positive focus. Plus, when you sign up, you get 2 free gifts, a 30-minute binaural meditation and 30 days of journaling prompts to help you remember who you truly are. And it's all completely free. So join over 9,000 people and go to mindlove.com to sign up or text the word morning to 33777. Let's talk about legacy for a minute. We're all working so hard on personal growth and building better lives and creating something meaningful. But how do we protect everything we're building? Look, I know life insurance isn't the sexiest topic, but it might be one of the most loving things you can do for your family. We kept putting it off. It's funny how things never feel like a priority until you need it, which is the total wrong way to approach life insurance. But now that we have kids, there is no way I'm taking a chance that they won't be taken care of if something happens to me. So suddenly, this was our number one priority. And SelectQuote makes it surprisingly simple. They're one of America's leading insurance brokers with nearly 40 years of experience helping over 2 million customers. What makes them different is just how personal it is. Their licensed agents take the time to understand your specific situation so that they can find you the right coverage. We're talking 15 minutes to get exactly what you need. And I love that they actually reward you for all the self-work you're doing. So if you're in good health, you could get same-day coverage for up to $5 million. No medical exam needed. And it's way more affordable than you might think. Coverage up to $1 million could cost as little as $20 per month. So get the right life insurance for you for less at selectquote.com/mindlove. Go to selectquote.com/mindlove today to get started. That's selectquote.com/mindlove. I'm having an aha moment because when I first started the whole personal development journey, I went in pretty deep. I was like, my life is screwed up. I need to fix some things. And one of the first things I feel like a lot of people start to understand or start to learn is that aspect of gratitude and focusing on what you have versus what you don't have. Right. And that is basically the same concept about what you're saying right now, only it's what you're doing versus what you're not doing. And it's interesting to me because I felt like I had perfected gratitude. Well, not really perfected. It's one of those things where I get into the habit of it and then I'll find myself slipping and I'll be like, why don't I feel as happy right now? Oh yeah, focus on gratitude. But it is one of those ongoing habits that I always return to. But it's interesting to me because I am starting to understand that with every area of my life, it's almost like I need to relearn the concept altogether. But I had a moment similar to what you're saying just this morning. So my sitter comes on Tuesdays because that's when I do interviews. But she tends to come, or she comes at the same time the interviews tend to start. So usually in the morning, I'm like, okay, well, can my husband help out a little bit while I'm preparing and all this stuff? Well, I already know that that's going to happen. And so this morning I was just sitting there with my baby and I was looking into his eyes, just being fully present, not being distracted by anything. And I had this little voice in my head that said, you should really be preparing for your interview today. And I stopped it and I said, this is the most important thing though. You're already pretty prepared for this interview, and I allowed that to fall off almost naturally, but I'm not great at it every time. I'm not sure why it happened this morning. Maybe I was channeling your energy already.
Well, I love that you bring this up because gratitude is such a powerful practice in life, whether you are a person of faith or not. But here's what I believe. And this is something that I don't think we talk about enough, because gratitude is one of those things that I think the majority of people agree is powerful, right? Like it's powerful in the practical, it's powerful in the spiritual. It's a powerful practice in your life. I believe that gratitude and guilt are incompatible. I don't think you can be grateful and guilty for the same thing. And so it is a very powerful practice to practice gratitude in order to combat the guilt. So when that guilt creeps up, oh, you should feel so guilty. You have this big house. You should feel so guilty. You have these healthy babies. There's people that, would give anything. It's like, no, you can switch that and go, I'm so grateful for this house. I'm so grateful for these healthy babies. I'm so grateful to get to do work I love. I'm so grateful for a babysitter that can come alongside me and help me so that I can go have these other interests and use my gifts in other ways. I'm so grateful for a supportive spouse. I think that when you channel that gratitude like you're talking about and you get in the habit of practicing those thoughts, I think that is a very powerful way to combat the guilt that creeps up as well. But you're right, it constantly creeps up, and we're going to have a defense plan if we're going to combat it. Because if not, we're going to live our whole lives feeling like we're failing, and we're not.
Right. And that makes perfect sense, because guilt is a mindset of lack, whereas gratitude is the mindset of abundance. It's like, oh, these are all the things I don't have, or I'm not doing, or I can't do. And these are all the things. Gratitude is what I do have, what I am doing. And so it's just a shift in focus. It's really the glass half full or glass half empty type thing. But one thing I find is important is sometimes people get into the cycle of, they might be listening to this and think, gosh, all I've been doing is feeling guilty. And then they start beating themselves up about the guilt. But I think it's important to remember that it's a survival mechanism. Our brains focus on those things because that's how we survived, like however long ago. But now most of us are living in a home. We're protected. We don't need that same survival mechanism. And so I think it's going to take years and years to retrain that mechanism in our brains, but we can do it just for ourselves. But I'm curious, how do you think we ended up here? Why is it that we feel so victim to our to-do list? It should be obvious that maybe the baby in front of us is the most important thing, but why do you think we got so out of balance to where we prioritize these like paper lists of things to do?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely a combination of factors. And it's interesting because when you were talking about like these thoughts that creep up and thoughts of guilt and so on, research shows that the average human being has on average 30,000 thoughts a day. Some people all the way up to 60,000 thoughts a day. Research shows up to 70 to 80% of those thoughts are negative. So if you can, in a way, divorce yourself from your thoughts, where you begin to think like, you question those thoughts. You don't believe everything that you think. A thought is just that, a thought. You have 30,000 more a day. They're not all necessarily true. Many are not true. They're not all necessarily yours, where you have to believe them without even questioning them. And so when these thoughts creep in, you can begin to put up filters and go, is this true? Is this right? Do I believe this? Is this thought serving me? And if it's not, then you don't have to accept that thought. You don't have to allow it to take up residence in your mind. And so I think a lot of times if we don't question our thoughts, then they do have power over us. But if we can begin to question them, then we can replace those thoughts with gratitude, with truth, and so on. And so I think that that's a really important reminder as we talk about some of these things that pop into our mind, to question those things. Don't believe everything that you think. You have 30,000 thoughts a day. Many are negative and many are not true. But to your question about kind of how we got here, I definitely think it's a combination of, and I talk about this in the book, but if you walk through the history of technology and work, and even from looking at the 50s into the 80s when women entered the workforce more, 2007 when the iPhone came out. Now you're seeing solopreneurs, entrepreneurs. You're seeing even in the last 2 years with COVID, work from home. Our world is always changing, which means the demands on us are always changing, often always increasing. And so instead of cutting things out or editing, we just try to cram more in. We think, well, I want to do it all. It's all good. And that's the reason that I think the question that I posed at the beginning is so powerful. The question that you should ask yourself when you're deciding if you want to say yes to something or no to something is not, is this good? Do I want to do it? Does it sound fun? Are my friends doing it? You ask yourself, is this right now? Because a good thing at the wrong time is the wrong thing. A good thing at the wrong time will stress you out. So instead of asking yourself, what is good? What's a fun opportunity? What do I have FOMO about? What are my friends doing? What does everyone think I should do? Ask yourself, is this right now? Because if it's right now, then you're going to feel that sense of balance, even if that decision is hard. Even if it's something you don't necessarily want to do, you're going to feel peace. And that's what led me down this path, because I noticed that when people talked about this word balance, they had all these different definitions. We've got all these analogies. It was always asked that way. How do you balance it all? Like it's a verb. It's an action. We've got these analogies of juggling balls and spinning plates and walking a tightrope. And let's just go ahead and talk about this. Like, have you ever seen a tightrope walker? Like, they are stressed. Every muscle on their body is tense. That does not sound fun. This is not how I want to live my life. I don't want to just be a better juggler. That sounds like a freaking circus. Instead, I think that we can ask a different question. What if balance isn't so much something you do, how you balance it all? What if balance is something you could create in your life, where you feel a sense of balance, even in an out of balance world, where you can be a balanced person and still be busy, where balance looks more like peace, confidence, being proud of how you spend your time, actually enjoying your life. I think that's what we're actually after when we say we want balance. And it turns out the path to that is not productivity. It's not waking up earlier, staying up later, having a better time management app, pouring more coffee, working smarter and harder, and being more efficient. That's not the path to what we're really after. And so I want to unpack for people a path that gets you to the true version of balance, where you feel that peace and that confidence. And it looks less like a juggler. Like if you think of a visual, because I love visuals for teaching. If you think of a juggler, they're always juggling. They always have more balls than they could hold at one time. That's why they have to juggle, because they can't hold them all, right? So some are in the air, some are in transit, some their eyes are watching, but it's just a stressful exercise. It's stressful, it's unpredictable, it's risky, and you can drop things. I want to give people a different visual. What if instead of juggling, you just decide, these are the 3 to 5 balls that I can hold right now. For me this fall, it's been launching a book, my family in seminary. I can hold those. And I'm going to intentionally choose to sit the others down. I'm going to sit them down on the weight rack. I'm going to sit them to the side and go, it doesn't mean I'll never do those things again. It doesn't mean I'll never have a clean house again. I'll never work out again. I'll never see my friends again. It's just not right now. So what's right now are these 3 balls I'm going to hold and control. I'm in control of my life. And I'm going to sit the others down intentionally, which means I'm not going to look at that weight rack of things I'm not doing and feel like a failure, because I'm in control. I decided what I'm going to hold right now and what I'm going to sit down right now. There's no risk of dropping things, and I'm not a victim whenever the world gets really busy. And so I just want to help people have a deeper sense of control, realizing you get to decide what's right for you. No one gets to tell you what should be important to you. It's your life. So if what's right for you in this season is working really hard on your business and working 80-hour weeks, then good for you to do that. If what's right for you is taking your foot off the gas, being with your kids, or what's right for you is some self-care and working out and travel, you get to decide what your version of balance looks like. But I just want to remind people, this is your life. That's the only version of balance that should matter to you anyway. I just want to help you figure out what that is for you.
There's so much wisdom in that. And the compassion with like putting things down, where I've had to put some things down that I love, actually, but I've swapped them. And some of them, for example, I did yoga every single day for at least an hour before I had a baby. Mm-hmm. And I have done yoga since I've had a baby, but it's very difficult to find the time. I live in a town that doesn't have a yoga studio, which is really unfortunate. But so I've got to do it by myself. And sometimes I fit it in, but it's not the daily practice that I've almost identified with over the years. Like I am a yogi. I've done it for so long. Right. But what I'm doing now instead, because I can take my baby, sometimes it induces naps, is long walks. And so right now I do really long walks. Well, my husband and I have had a lot of conversations, because he has a lot of hobbies too. He snowboards. It's his dream to have the world record in doing the human flag, when you're like, hold yourself out from a pole. It's really insane. And he hasn't had as much time, and he's like really beating himself up. And I'm like, babe, well, you can get back to that. It's not giving up on a dream, but also like we need help around here. So maybe you can't train for 3 hours a day like you used to, you know what I mean? And so having that compassion when I am setting something down. And maybe it's helpful even for some people to make a plan. Like, okay, when my baby's 6 months old, I'm going to reprioritize my schedule to see if I can fit yoga in more regularly or something like that. It always helps me to like put a bullet point or like pin something on the wall to be like, okay, this isn't gone. You're not giving up on this. You're not just getting old and not doing yoga anymore.
Well, you make such an important point. And here's the thing that I would encourage people. Just because something isn't right now doesn't mean it will never be right. Melissa, I want to go to Europe. I want to get a dog. I want to move houses. I want to run a full marathon. I want to do lots of things. Those are not right now. And if I tried to force something that is a good thing that I want to do, that I even identify with, that I identify as a full marathon runner or as a yogi, or in your example, then if I put the pressure on myself to do it now, then I come up with the result that I'm failing. I get an F on my report card. I'm not pursuing my goals. I've lost myself. All these narratives that are not true. The real practical wisdom is just because something's not right now doesn't mean it's never right. It's just not right now. We'll come back around to that. When is the season to run that full marathon? When is the season to get back into yoga? When is the season to be a human flag? Like, that can happen in another season. That dream has not died. It's just not right now. And sometimes we find ourselves in seasons because of choices that we've made. So for example, I chose to launch a book in the fall of this year. That's a choice I made. So everything flows around that. I'm not a victim. I chose that. So I'm choosing not to try to cram in working out time with friends and a clean house because I've chosen to launch this book. I'm saying this is a higher priority. Other times we find ourselves in seasons that we don't want to be in because of what happens in our lives. You got a health diagnosis. You have a parent that is sick and you got to take care of them. You've got a child in middle school that is really struggling and they need your hands-on, very focused attention in that season. When you're in a season that is hard, when you're in a season where something in your life is very demanding of you, like you, by the way, Melissa, with a newborn baby, then you ask yourself that question again. Okay, in light of that, what's right now? In light of that health diagnosis, what really matters? What's most important? In light of this new season, what's right now? And you just give yourself permission to constantly be assessing and reassessing what's right now. And when you do that, you are going to give yourself permission to always be doing the right things at the right time. And Melissa, we don't do this. As women, we are so bad about things in our world changing, and we still hold our feet to the fire for the pressures and expectations we had of ourselves before that thing happened. I want people to remember, when things change, things need to change. You have permission to change your mind, change your plans, and change your priorities. If you're changing your goals in June because your world has changed and your priorities have changed, good. Let me be the one person in June going, good. Abandon those New Year's resolutions and do what's right now. Because things change and you should change your mind to reflect that.
I don't know why it took me so long to invest in good bedding. I resisted it for years, but something flipped in me about 3 years ago. And now I'm basically a pillow connoisseur. I've tried them all, and I get weirdly excited about good bedding. Because here's the thing, we spend a third of our lives in bed, and the quality of that time affects literally everything else, which is why I'm so excited to tell you about my latest obsession, Lagoon Sleep Pillows. What sets them apart is their matching system. You take a quick 2-minute quiz about your sleep style and your preferences, and then they match you with your perfect pillow. I was matched with their Otter pillow, and I am so impressed. Lately, I've just needed more support, and this seems to cradle me in all the right places. I'm also low-key obsessed with their travel pillow, which I use for way more than just travel. I actually hug it, use it as leg support, and of course, take it on trips with me. Well, the secret is in their adjustable fill. You can add or remove it to get that perfect alignment for your spine. A study even found that the right supportive pillow can improve sleep quality by 63%. And Lagoon lets you try their matched pillow for 100 nights risk-free. Free returns, no questions asked. Falling asleep has never been easier. I toss and turn less and just wake up feeling refreshed every morning. Go to lagoonsleep.com and take their awesome 2-minute sleep quiz to find your match. Use the code MIND for 15% off your first purchase. What's interesting to me is that even when we choose the thing that's the priority, like you launching a book, me having a baby. It's so easy to get caught up in these cycles where we forget that we actually chose this, where it's like, and my husband's really great at reminding me that it's like, we chose this, remember? And I'm like, oh yeah. And something about just that realization puts me a little bit more at ease, maybe because I give myself compassion. Maybe it's because it focuses my mindset back on what I do have. Like, I chose this. My life is actually going exactly how I chose that it goes. Like, did I think that I was going to have the same amount of time before I chose this thing that is clearly going to take up time? And one of the things you talk about in your book that I think is so important, you name all of the things that steal our time the most. But one of them that I think sneaks up on people is the stories and the narratives that we tell ourselves that you were just talking about. Those can get us feeling stuck as well, because we're building these self-beliefs around like, oh, I can't do this, or I'm not the fun mom, or we don't have a big house to have people, whatever it is, where you kind of focus on who you think you are in this new role or with this new thing that you're doing. And we create our own boundaries, really, because we start identifying with something that we don't necessarily have to identify with, when it could just be the transition that it's like, this is now and this too shall pass.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because I mean, gosh, we could talk forever about the power of our thoughts and beliefs and so on. But I think this makes this plays into our idea of balance, because a lot of women, stand around at the park during play dates and they just talk about how they're failing. Oh, I'm failing. Here's how I blew it. Here's how I screwed up today. And I get it. They want to be authentic or vulnerable, but it's not even coming from this place of authenticity and vulnerability. There's no hope in it. It's just a wine session, a pity party of how we're all failing and we're somehow connecting on how pitiful we all are. And it's really damaging. It's really damaging our sense of self, and I don't think we realize it. So let me give you a weird example, Melissa, if this is okay. This is kind of like
I love weird examples, so go.
Okay, great. I have so many. Okay, so my husband and I have a lake house in Alabama, a little cabin that we rent out for Airbnb in the winter, and then we go down there in the summer. And so a couple years ago, it was the fall, and I was going down there to flip it for guests, and I had a day off of work, and I was like, I'm going to go have just like a night by myself, which as a mom is the greatest gift. Just time alone. You're like, I'm going to have a glass of wine. I'm going to watch The Greatest Showman. I'm going to do whatever the heck I want. It's going to be glorious for 24 hours. So I go down there, and this cabin has floor-to-ceiling windows, and it's in the country. Okay, I mean like middle of nowhere country, okay? So I'm there by myself, and I've got all the lights on. I'm watching The Greatest Showman. I'm blaring, singing the songs at the top of my terrible, terrible singing voice. I'm sewing some curtains to hang these new curtains for the guests and so on. And in the middle of this moment, it's like probably 10 o'clock at night. In the middle of this moment, the power goes out. And because I'm in the country, it is like pitch black. Like I can't see my hand in front of my face. And in this moment, like Melissa, I know exactly what happened. The killer's outside and they're coming to get me, right? Like this is the scary movie when the killer has cut the power because they're going to come kill you. And so I frantically am like running around my house. I get my phone flashlight. I'm on 17%. I get a butcher knife from the knife blocks. I'm like, I'm ready to defend myself from this mass serial killer that's for sure going to come inside any minute. Then I'm like, I need some lights. So I light every candle in the house, and I love candles. So I had a lot of candles. So then I'm standing there with my phone flashlight and a butcher knife surrounded by like 50 candles with wide eyes and wild hair. And it occurs to me in this moment that the terrifying person in this situation is me. I look like this insane person. And then I'm like, oh, this is the part in the movie where like you yell at the girl. You're like, girl, you got to run. Don't go upstairs. You got to get out, right? Like you're screaming at her. I'm like, I got to get out. So I blow out the candles. I take my butcher knife. I take my cell phone. I take my keys. I get in my car and I drive all the way to Nashville, Tennessee, which is an hour and a half from this lake house. And I told my husband I was on the way home, and he was like, babe, I'm a little worried about you driving at night. I was like, I'm so wired I could go to California. I was like, I'm out of here. Now, it turns out that storms knocked the power out, right? Like it wasn't a mass murder, it turns out. But it doesn't matter what was true. What mattered was what I believed, because I acted out of my beliefs. And that is true in life. It doesn't matter what is true. It doesn't matter if you are the most amazing mom in the world if you don't believe it, because you will experience what you believe. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. I had a visceral reaction. My palms were sweating. My heart was racing. My breathing was shallow because I was convinced someone was coming to kill me. which I realize is ridiculous as we tell this story now. You will act out of your beliefs. You will experience what you believe, whether it's true or not, which is the reason I'm on this crusade, Melissa, through my book, through my work on this topic of life balance to set women free. It's not about time. It's not even about balance. I want to shake women by the shoulders and go, stop believing that you're failing because you're not. I don't want to get to the end of your life at 80 and look back at scrapbooks and go, girl, you were doing great. Why didn't you know it while you were in it? I want women to embrace this amazing life that they have and be proud of how they spend their time and be proud of all the things they're doing right instead of being weighed down by guilt for all the things they think they're doing wrong. No one can do everything all the time. Pick what you want to do and then freaking be proud of it. You're not failing, but it starts in your thoughts. And so I want to set women free there.
Yeah, I resonate with that so much because the moment that you think that you're failing, your whole body responds just as though you are. And so you don't even get to enjoy the moments with your kid or with your accomplishment or with whatever you're working on.
That's what you experience. You experience
it's
failure. Yep.
The journey. And it reminds me of how we spend how we look back to our photos when we're 20 years old and we knew that day, we remember taking that photo and we remember how we thought we looked fat and how we hated our body. And we look back and we're like, I looked amazing. Why did I not enjoy it?
I thought it was big in high school, Melissa. I was like a size 6, but because my friends were size 00, I always thought I was the big girl. And I look back, I'm like, girl, you were cute. Why didn't you know it?
I know.
Why didn't you know it at the time?
And it's like, and even if you didn't look your cutest that day, if you believe you look cute, other people believe you're cute too. It's like, It just resonates that way. Well, no, another part of your book that I almost teared up when I was reading was, and maybe it's because it hit a chord, but you were talking about how tired does not mean out of balance. Stress and overwhelm do not mean out of balance. And I realized in that moment that was a shift I need to make. At the end of the day, when I'm like, I'm exhausted, part of me feels like I did it wrong when I could be feeling, wow, you got a lot done today and you earned this tired. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I think when we're tired or when we're stressed or when we're overwhelmed, and I break all three of those down in the book and kind of the different effect they have on our lives and our sense of balance. But when we feel those things, it's not that the feelings aren't real. The feelings are very real and valid. The only problem is they can lie to us about what's going on because when you're tired, stressed, or overwhelmed, everything feels bigger, everything feels harder, everything feels more impossible. And you feel like you're going to feel that way forever. It's kind of like for anyone that has ever, for anyone listening right now that did not love pregnancy, I'm so grateful for my children, but I was not one of those cute.
I hated
women that
it.
had a cereal bowl for a bump. I was like the Titanic, and I could not get out of bed. Okay, so I did not enjoy this process, though I loved the result. But when I was pregnant, I thought I'm going to be pregnant forever. Now I understand in my head that that's not possible. At some point, this baby's coming out. But in those 9 months, I was like, this is my destiny. I'm going to feel like this for the rest of my life. That's how it feels when you're in a hard season or when you're tired or stressed or overwhelmed. And so I just want to a little bit separate our feelings from the facts. You feel tired. The fact is, if you get some rest, you'll feel better. You feel stressed. The fact is, if we can handle this situation or get through this situation, that stress will go away. We feel overwhelmed. The fact is, we will not feel this way forever. And so just separating that, because it can feel like this doomsday scenario of, oh my gosh, my whole life is out of balance. I mean, if you felt like that for 6 years, might be time to make some changes. But if we just have had a hard week or a hard season, that's just a feeling and we're going to get through it. And that just helps us have the hope to hang on to get through it because we will.
So the question is, how do we really decide what matters? It sounds like a simple question, but I think if anyone's like me, there's so often that somebody will send me an email that says urgent and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, this is so urgent. And then I'm like, wait, this isn't important to me at all. Right. Right. And so what is your process for really laying out what matters so that we can see and then convince ourselves that all these other things might be okay to set down? Or what does that process look like for you?
Yes. Well, I love this question. So I talk a lot about seasons at the end of the book. And honestly, if I could go back and write it again, I think I would move seasons up to be the first chapter because everything is through the lens of your season. And so my year typically falls on 3 seasons, and that's spring, summer, and fall. That follows my work, which is busy in the spring and fall, and my summer, which is lighter. It also follows my kids' school calendar. So different people may have different rhythms, but there's probably some seasonality to your year in some capacity. And so you can base it like that, or you can define a season, for example, by something going on in your life. Like, hey, I'm training for a marathon, so I'm in a 4-month season of marathon training, or I'm helping my parent who's sick and I'm in a season of caring for them. So it can be defined different ways, but your season will dictate what matters to you. It will dictate how many things make the cut. So for example, in a lighter season, like my summer season, 6 or 7 things might make the cut. I might be seeing friends and working out and having alone time, having date night, time with my kids, time on a hobby, having a clean house, and, and working on some other things. Well, in a heavier season, like fall, where I have a couple things that are very consuming, like book launch and seminary, less things make the cut. So only 3 things make the cut right now. I'm not working out. I'm not seeing my friends. I'm not having date nights. I'm not keeping a clean house. So your season often determines not only what's important to you, but how many things you can prioritize. Because in a lighter season, you might have 6 to 7. And in a harder season, you might have 2 or 3. But I think that you can look at it a couple different ways. You can visualize your season and say, what do I want this season to look like? Another way to ask it is, what do I want to occur in the season? So last spring, my husband and I sat down, we did this exact exercise, and I said, you know what? A top priority for me this year is getting my boys to swim. They were 4 and 6. That was a reflection of their season of life. They were developmentally able to learn to swim independently at 4 and 6. It was a reflection of the season of the year. It was spring, summer was coming up. We're going to be around water all the time at the lake house and so on. And it was a reflection of my priorities as a person that loves water and wants to be safe. So I made that a priority. Well, then that informed my calendar. Because I took them to the YMCA every day in the spring. I signed them up for swim lessons in the summer. And now these boys are swimming like fish. They're jumping off the high dive. That didn't happen by accident. It happened because I decided it was important, as tactical as that is. And so you simply ask yourself, what do I want this season to look like? And what are the top 3 to 5 to 7 things that I want to make sure happen in this specific season as a reflection of what's going on in my world, my work, my health, my kids, and so on. But another way, if that still is hard for someone and they're going, I don't know what's important to me. Another way to ask it, and I talk about this in the book, another way to ask it is, who do you want to be? Like, who do you want to be in this season? Now, of course, we don't really change. We are who we are, but you can think, what aspects of myself do I want to really engage in this season? So I'll tell you, who I wanted to be in the summer was fun mom. That's what I want to be. I want to be at the lake. I want to be at the playground. I want to be playing with my kids, getting ice cream. I want to be fun mom. That's my focus for the summer. And so all my decisions and my calendar and to-do list is going to reflect me being the person I want to be. In the fall, I am an author that's launching a freaking book. That's what I want to be. And I want to make sure my calendar reflects that. And of course, I'm going to spend time with my family outside of that. And then seminary flows after that. So we can never be everything all the time or do everything all the time. So you can ask yourself, who do I want to be in this season? And then when you know who you want to be, that then informs what your calendar looks like, because you're going to do the activities that allow you to be the person you want to be. And so that might just give you a different lens to look at it, to get more clarity around what each season looks like and what you want to focus on.
That is very powerful. And I inadvertently used a similar shift recently because I was trying to balance all these things and still show up with my podcast as best that I can. That's a big priority for me. But then, you have the things like the Facebook group and Instagram and Telegram and all the things. and I also wanted to stay informed. And so I was feeling overwhelmed. And I was meditating one day and I actually realized the most important thing to me is the energy that I carry, because that is going to cross over to every single role that I'm in right now. And most importantly, the one with my son, because I am modeling behavior for him. And do I want him to see that life is frantic and full of these things where mommy's being pulled in all these different directions? Or do I want him to see that I hold my energy, that I manage my energy, and that I can be there fully present for him? And then when it's time to be with my podcast and be that, I can be fully present for that. That's what I wanted to model. And so instead of doing more things and trying to show up even better on all the platforms and in all the roles that I actually just made it a priority to center myself, made sure that I'm I might not have time to do an hour of yoga every day, but I am prioritizing 20 minutes of meditation every day, because then when I do show up in all of those roles, I am the version of me that I want to be, rather than just checking off the tasks that I want to get done.
Well, you make such a powerful point there, because I think so many women are running ragged and they think that they are doing the right things, but it's turning them into someone they don't even like. They're rushed, they're anxious, they're angry, their energy is bad, they are impatient with their kids, they're unhappy with their spouse, they're unhappy with themselves, and they are turning into someone they don't even like in a life they don't like. And they thought that checking off the to-do list was going to be what made them feel fulfilled, and it doesn't. And so I'm so happy you brought that up, Melissa, because I think that is such an important point when you ask yourself a different question of who do I want to be? And then what's so cool is you can make different decisions about what you do that allows you to be who you want to be. So in the path that I lay out of the path to balance, I say life balance is doing the right things at the right time. How do you do that? I give you 5 practical steps, and I'll do a quick overview because I want to highlight one of them. Step 1, figure out what matters. That's what we're talking about here with the right things. Step 2, stop doing what doesn't matter. Step 3, create a calendar that reflects what matters. This is where we get tactical to actually do what we say we want to do. Step 4, protect what matters. And step 5, be present for what matters. When you do that in any new season, you keep revisiting it in any new season, then you'll always be doing the right things at the right time, and you'll be creating your version of balance. But here's what's interesting. Step 4, protect what matters. This is all about setting boundaries and saying no. So I have boundaries in place that I have set to help me be the person I want to be. Exactly what you were talking about with my energy. So one of the things I want to be for my kids is I want to be present. And if I'm not careful, I will pick up my phone over and over again, even if it doesn't ring. I'm not alone. The average iPhone user picks up their phone 2,617 times a day. And so I have put a practice in place that when I walk in the house, I place my phone in a box, out of sight, out of mind, and I don't touch it until my kids are in bed. So if we want to be the people we want to be, we've got to put some boundaries in place to not just protect our time from the outside world, chipping away at it and everybody pushing us around with their urgent emails and all of their demanding requests and their guilt trips and so on. We also need to put these things in place to protect us from ourselves, from our temptation to be the hero, for our temptation to say yes to everything, for our temptation to respond to everything that comes our way, to decide what matters to me and stay focused on that. So I'm so glad you brought that up, because I think if we don't question that, we're going to turn into people we don't even want to be.
Right. I actually sent an email to somebody once and got back an autoresponder that said something along the lines of, in order to be the person that I'm trying to be, I need to reprioritize my day. So it might take me 3 to 5 business days to get back to you. And it was one of those moments where I was like, this is the most inspiring email I've ever read in my entire life.
Yeah.
And we get afraid like, oh, but it's going to take me, I can't wait 5 days. It's like, well, can you set an expectation? Because that's the thing that gets on people's nerves, is when they have an expectation to hear back from you. The moment you say, this might take me a whole week, people are like, oh yeah, you do you, But sometimes we don't even realize that we're putting this pressure on ourselves, or that we're spending time in the wrong spots. Like I remember at one point, I'm like, yeah, I don't watch that much TV. And it might've been like 1 to 2 shows at night. And I'm like, wait, that's like 14 hours a week. That's a part-time job, And so the moment that like came to light, I'm like, what else could I do? And now like I might watch 1 to 2 shows a week now. And I'm suddenly like, oh, I have so much more time. But so often, especially parents are like, I just don't have time for that. And it's like, if you really laid out your whole day, I bet you could find some things you could say no to.
That's exactly right. And that's what's key in step 2 of stop doing what doesn't matter. Because if we would cut out the stuff that doesn't matter, we would free up so much time for stuff that does. And it's not any one thing like, oh, we hate TV or we hate screens. It's just like we spend a lot of time doing things that we would never say is actually important to us. We're just tired and we get in the habit of doing it every day, like the example with shows, which I do as well. And so when you begin to cut that out and be intentional, you go, oh my gosh, I have so much more time than I realized. And I love how you brought that up, because I think that one of the things that we need to also acknowledge when you send that auto reply, if someone does that, like it'll take 3 to 5 days to get back to you. We need to acknowledge that sometimes people won't get it, and sometimes people won't like it. There will be some people that will see your boundary and respect them, and there will be some people that will be offended by them because it inconveniences them, because you don't do what they want you to do. You don't meet the expectations they have for you, and you need to be prepared for that resistance. But the thing that I say every single chapter in this book, I say it over and over again. I beat this drum because I want my reader to get it. This is your life. No one gets to tell you how you should spend it. This is your life. Now, of course, you connect with your spouse and your kids and your family inside your household, but outside of that, no one gets to tell you what should be important to you and what you should be doing. So my example that comes to mind for me of how I do that, Melissa, like in the example of the auto reply. So in my direct messages in Instagram, the fact that that feature is available through Instagram gives people the unspoken expectation that they deserve a response. Often, not always, but a lot of times. I don't respond almost ever to direct messages. No, that's not because I don't care about people. Of course I care about people. But if I'm going to prioritize something, that is not making the cut for me. I have 3 little kids, and I'm going to spend time with my 3 little kids and be present with them. And I'm going to do the work that I do through my podcast, through my regular feed post or my stories or whatever other formats I've chosen to prioritize in my work. And that's one feature that I'm just not going to engage in. Now, some people may not like it. Oh, that's not a best practice and you need to do it. Okay, that's totally fine. With your Instagram account, you can do whatever you want to. I'm not going to. And so we just need to be prepared with whatever your boundaries are, whether it's not prioritizing a feature or function of your business or access to you, or you put your phone on do not disturb during certain hours, or you have an auto reply that is 3 to 5 days, whatever boundaries you set in order for you to do what you say you want to do and be the person you want to be, you just need to expect that some people won't get it, some people won't like it, and you will experience resistance, and that's okay. Just be prepared for that because remember, it's your life. They can spend their life however they want to. You get to spend your life however you want to.
Things like that used to send me into a spiral. You know, I'd be all confident in what I'm doing, and then somebody would resist, and I'd be like, oh my God, and I'd suddenly start doubting. But a big realization that really changed the way I view a lot of resistance about who I am or how I live my life or whatever it is that when somebody responds to you in that way, it's a mirror about how they respond to themselves. And so if they think that I should be at their beck and call, they likely feel that they have to be at other people's beck and call. You know, they have to be available for everybody else's needs too. And so then they're like, wait, you can't do this. This isn't how the world works. And it's not really about you. It's their view on life and the expectations they set for themselves, which might not be healthy. So I don't need to have my standards be somebody else's because they live their life that way or they think those are the rules of the game of life. I have taken intentional time to think about this. I've made a clear decision. And so how that person lives their life, maybe by next year, by me setting this boundary, it'll plant a seed, they'll start thinking, and then you happen to email them 2 years later and they have an autoresponder. You just never know.
Well,
you know?
And I don't know when this is going to air, but as we're recording this right now, the holidays are coming up. And this is a very perfect conversation for holidays for family because you get to decide with the people in your household how you're going to spend the holidays, where, what times, which things you're going to go to, what traditions, Christmas morning, all of that. And you will guaranteed experience resistance from all the other family members that expect it to be a certain way and expect everybody to do this and that and the other. You may be coming up against resistance from parents or in-laws that they did it a certain way for their in-laws or their parents. And so they expect that you will. And when you don't, they're offended and their feathers are ruffled. And so it's a magnified example of what we're talking about here, where there's a conversation that has to be had that's like, hey, we would love to spend time with you. And here are the options we have available. We're going to spend, in this example, Christmas morning at our house. And then outside of that, we would love to see you. And so for you to remember, they may feel that pressure because they did it a certain way, but it doesn't mean you have to do it that way.
That is a really good point. I actually had a similar conversation with my mom recently because my mom likes to do Christmas a certain way. My mom has, she likes to center Christmas around her faith, whereas the rest of our extended family does not have the same beliefs that she has. And so she's complained to me before, like, they don't want to pray at dinner, or they don't want to do this, or like Christmas morning is supposed to be about this. And just recently I had a conversation with her where I said, Mom, can you give those things to yourself? Like you're never going to really feel fulfilled in these things if you're expecting other people to value it the same way you do. They're going to value other things and be okay with that, but doesn't mean that you have to lack that on your holidays. Just figure out a way to create that so that you experience it for yourself and let go of what you expect other people to do for their Christmas. So it's like the same thing, but you we can each prioritize and we can respect what's valuable or what is the priority for each other. So thank you so much for bringing this topic to light, especially so timely just before the holidays. And so for listeners that are interested in learning about you, connecting with you, and reading your new book, where's the best place for them to connect with you online?
Oh my gosh, Melissa, you're awesome. Thank you for having me. Everything is at ChristyWright.com. And the book is Take Back Your Time, The Guilt-Free Guide to Life Balance. Of course, you can get it anywhere books are sold. But this has been so fun. Thank you for having me. This is awesome.
All the links for this episode will be at mindlove.com/210. So your challenge for this week is to figure out a few things not to do anymore. This is one of the hardest challenges because I swear we all know the things that are actually wasting our time, but those are the things that are the hardest to give up. But if you actually track how much time all of these things are taking, it makes it a lot more motivating because you actually see, oh, this isn't just wasting a few minutes every day. This might be wasting like 60% of my waking hours. Okay, maybe that's exaggerating a little bit for some people, but come on, I know plenty of people whose screen time is like 5 to 8 hours per day. So try it this way. Actually write down everything that you do, just maybe 1 to 3 days in a row. You can just use the calendar right there on your phone. When you finish a task, time block that on your calendar, like, okay, 10 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. I spent on Facebook. And make sure that you do it at the end of this block of time so that you're always logging your new time blocks per se. I realized that when I actually cook 3 meals a day, that takes like 3 to 4 hours out of my day, which is a lot. So then you can actually problem solve and be like, well, can I prep certain things on Sundays to make it easier? Can I sign up for a meal delivery program? Can I somehow outsource this? Do I have Uber Eats and maybe I choose to get Uber Eats 3 times a week or something like that? So you start to see the solutions when you actually see how bad the problem is. And in doing this, it'll make it really apparent which things are total time sucks, like scrolling through social media or whatever your personal vice is. That could even include maybe if you pour your glass of wine at 5 p.m. and then that becomes the downhill of the whole day and it becomes difficult to be productive on anything, even if you are drinking moderately. Okay, maybe this is a personal thing, which is why I gave up drinking. Guess what? At the time of recording this, I'm like almost 100 days in. So excited, but that's not what this is about. This is about time sucks. So identify yours so that you can create some solutions to fit in maybe 30 minutes a day to do something that feels purposeful for you. And remember, something purposeful does not mean that you need to go start a business around your deepest trauma. It could just mean that you spend more time with your children during that time, or you journal or meditate or do something that makes you feel good. Whatever brings purpose to you. And let me know how it goes. Reach out to me on Instagram at MindLoveMelissa. If you found this episode helpful, consider sharing it. You can take a screenshot and tag MindLove Podcast and MindLoveMelissa on Instagram or send it straight to a friend who you know needs it. The best way to support the show is by joining MindLove Premium at mindlove.com/premium. You can also support one of my amazing sponsors or leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. So those are all ways to get involved and help support Mind Love. But otherwise, I'm just happy you're here. So thanks for giving your mind a little love today, and I'll see you next week.
Thanks for tuning into Your Higher Frequency with Mind Love. Head to mindlove.com for a free gift to keep your vibes up until next week.